Woodstock in 1969 was one of the most prolific expansions in musical creativity, much of which was facilitated by drug use.
What's your name? Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? He rich. Is he rich like me? Has he take us?
Beyond the music, pot, LSD, and other psychedelics proved to be an even wider cultural force. Flower power brought bold ideas of love and peace into homes across America and the world.
The time of the season for loving.
The psychedelic 60s was not without its casualties, as harder and more dangerous drugs like heroin began finding their popularity in the music scene. Many anti-drug public service announcements focused on the drug heroin began to come out in the 1960s. It was becoming a huge epidemic and would continue to be into the 1970s, especially in cities like New York.
It's getting near dawn.
Even the film industry began to use the subject as the source of plots for various movies including The Panic in Needle Park. It starred a young Al Pacino who played a heroin addict named Bobby, who lives in Needle Park, the nickname for an area on the Upper West Side of Manhattan where junkies congregated in the late 1960s. Sadly, the music industry wasn't scripted. These drugs were tragically beginning to silence some of the most beautiful and talented voices and musicians. In 1970, Jimi Hendrix died from choking on his vomit after a night of partying and an excessive amount of sleeping pills. Also that year, Janis Joplin was found dead of a heroin overdose. Jim Morrison was found dead in a Paris apartment bathtub in 1971. The 70s culture was a bit darker, and in some ways more destructive. While there were many tales of rock star excess and trashed hotel rooms, drugs were less of an inspiring force than the previous decade. The Rolling Stones, Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and many other megastars kept the hard partying image of rock stars in the minds of youth culture.
What about alcohol?
Alcohol make you drunk, man. It don't make you meditate. It just make you drunk. When you drink alcohol, you don't meditate. You're more get-headed. Herb is more a consciousness.
Bob Marley brought reggae across the world, and with it a Jamaican, marijuana-endorsing style that is still popular today. Cocaine became especially popular alongside disco in the late 70s. New York City's Studio 54 was epitome of the disco scene, with its tales of blow-fueled dancing and promiscuity. The 80s were a time of overindulgence. The glam metal rock of bands like Motley Crue, Van Halen, Twisted Sister, and dozens of others was being pumped out by a gluttonous industry, and cocaine poured down on the music industry like snow on Alaska.
The Bronx ablaze,
Also in the
city
80s,
bankrupt.
crack exploded on the same streets where hip-hop was being born, and was a common influence on the art form. Hip-hop gave a voice to the struggling classes. Hip-hop came straight from poorer, tougher neighborhoods, like Run DMC from New York City and NWA from Los Angeles. heroin took a spotlight once again in the early 90s with the startling and instantaneous rise of grunge rock. Bands like Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains and Nirvana conquered America in one quick sweep and moved on to dominate the world. All had members who battled heroin addiction, some of whom would lose that battle.